what to say about this book. I'm assuming not everyone here is going to have had a chance to read it yet. So let's be careful, I guess, around spoilers.
It's not nature writing.
It's not nature writing. I think that's
Brace yourself.
safe to say that, right? It's safe to say that it's not nature writing. Yeah. There's no mist. There's no.
There's some birds.
There's
a couple of birds in it.
There's some birds mentioned. Yeah, they make an appearance.
Yeah. But there are no having important feelings in nature.
No, there's none of that. There are lots of feelings.
Yeah.
So when Sin and I
we'll talk about that departure, I think, a little bit later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to? We try
it
to
is something
describe
I want to touch. Well, I have kind of, the softballs are kind of carefully calibrated at the beginning. So let's work through those. What I was going to say at the opening was the book is magnificent, but it's a lot of things. It's off the chain in the best possible ways. I think that's a fair description. And this conversation is likely to go off on unpredictable tangents, I think.
That's how we like it.
Knowing us. So let's, I guess, try to start on reasonably familiar territory. Clearly, this isn't your first rodeo, books-wise. And Sin, I know you've done a lot of work in horror and SF. So this wasn't entirely new to either of you, but it is, strictly speaking, a first novel for each of you.
Yeah,
which is
it's our
interesting,
debut.
You both had, obviously, long and, well, not excessively long, it's probably not the best choice of word, but you both served your time, and this is still a first for you. So how does that feel? Is that a journey that you want to talk about?
Well, I don't know how much we can shed light on it. It's wild. It's my first published novel, and I had been writing. I've been writing, I think, and you guys can fact check with my parents, who are here, since about 8 or 9, and creeping out teachers across the country and continents with weird little stories. But yeah, this is my first published novel.
But writing has always been there.
Always been. And yeah, I've come from a very musical family. We all play music, we all sing, we all perform in some way. So writing was always something that I did, but wasn't a thing that was ever seen as a thing that I would end up doing.
Right.
So it is a little bit of a surprise, but when you look through the trajectory of what I've been doing, it's always been stories. It's always been something or another. So it's good. It feels like a home. So it's really good.
And it wasn't a huge distinction for you, writing fiction for publication. It was just an extension of things that you were doing naturally your entire life.
I mean, I was a hobbyist writer.
Sure.
So the surprise is publication, not the writing. I was always going to be writing. What we did was write this book during lockdown to keep each other sane.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was I would be writing anyway. I just happened to luck into sharing this with Helen. And we lucked into keeping each other sane.
It was the most fun I've ever had writing. Like, genuinely, there were times I was like giggling as I wrote, and I was like, this feels illegal. Writing shouldn't be this much fun, and that was all really down to Sin. So yeah,
well, I mean, it was
a lot of giggling
effort.
as you read. I can attest. and Helen, for you, again, hardly new to this, broadly speaking, but fiction for you, was it an interesting crossing?
People like, oh, you're going to write a novel next, and I'm like, no, I'm not. And I don't think I couldn't have written this without Sin. No way.
Yeah.
I mean, my strengths, I think, are describing things, atmosphere, a few kind of vague thoughts about, where things should land. But Sin is a genius with characterization and dialogue, and I think the way that our two kind of minds rubbed up against each other when we were writing this made this book happen. And I don't think I could have written a novel without Sin.
Yeah.
But the sci-fi, this is the great secret, is that I've always been a sci-fi nerd. And, I was a little kid, and, there were sort of copies of Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov and Ursula Le Guin, and, there were kind of amazing, those 50s magazines full of stories, and I just used to eat them up. I loved them. But it was always a secret side of me, reading my William Gibson and stuff. I wasn't ashamed of it, but it just wasn't what I was writing. But it just felt as natural a home to me as any of the nature writing. Yeah,
great.
If not more, but don't tell anyone that.
You've touched on something I was going to ask as well, which is about collaboration. Because for me personally, I have to say, I have many cherished friends, including Helen, who are writers. And, to be clear, I have nothing but reverence for your work, but, there's no way in hell I could work with you because I couldn't work with anyone, me personally. Right? To me, no. That would,
I get it.
Yeah, that would.
I thought that
would trip all kinds of alarms for me. But clearly for you, that was, or was it? Tell me, because that's the question. Really, is how much of a big deal was collaboration for each of you?
As a hobbyist writer, I would write with friends. This is what we do.
Yeah.
This is how I've always spent my time online. I've always sat and either written my own, work that I was doing, but I'd send it to friends. Friends would edit it and send it back. We don't have editors. We don't have publishers. Sure. We're out there doing it.
Yeah, beta readers.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And then, there was always the side, if someone beta reads your stuff, you're their reader then. And, it's always a collaborative process. Mm-hmm. And then their stories become your stories are their stories. It's always been that case for me. It wasn't a departure.
It was a shock for me, though.
Yeah, it was a shock for you.
So my favorite thing about this was, we'll talk about a little bit about how this book was written, because it was completely unhinged. But basically, there were a few times early on where I'd write something and I'd be really proud of it, and I'd send it to Sin, and then Sin would write back and she'd have loads of notes and she'd change stuff. And I literally heard myself say things in my head like, "But I've won awards." And realizing that there was that weird sort of sense of vulnerability that I wasn't willing to kind of just go, okay, show me what. We had to get past that. Yeah, and that was hard for me for a while. I really had to sort of, stop being such an arse. Yeah. And,
I think that's something that...
But you already had experience with that, and
I had already done all the work for that. You just, if you're working with someone else, you're writing with someone else, you're there not to pump up their ego, but tell them the truth. Yeah. You're not a reader like an early reader is. And you're not an editor like an editor is. You're there as a complete, unbiased truth teller wherever possible. Yeah. And you have to be vulnerable. You have to let yourself open, and that's really scary. Yeah. And egos are a whole thing that you have to deal with. Different people have different egos, and how they deal with that is different. But yeah, I had that experience already going in. So actually, for this specific thing where Helen was like, "Ooh," I was braced for it. Yeah. And I had no clue, because nature writing, as you know, is the sort of, the disembodied 19th century male voice wandering around, pointing at plants and saying, aren't you lucky to have me to explain this to you? That's basically the nature writing mode. And having important thoughts and feelings with no one else in the picture. And this is one of the things I love about the nature writing thing, is that kind of 19th century, it's very politically dubious. You go out into the wild on your own and you look at a mountain and it makes you feel things. And there's no other voices telling you that what you're thinking is bullshit, because the mountain can't speak back. So actually, this was a really politically very important thing for me to do, I think, in terms of practice. I adore collaborating with Sin, and I think it's the most fun I've ever had. And as a writer too, there are those moments when you're writing where your subconscious might be working on plot or working on what you want to do next, but nothing's happening. You're just treading water. But then suddenly, 2,500 words would turn up that you'd written, and then that would be like, and then I'd move on from there. So it was like a really wonderful way to keep us both writing too, the sense that there was always going to be something new. There was that, and also there's the fact that, you didn't think that you could write and then you would have a springboard to keep going, but also, realistically, some days you just need a day off. And when you're writing a book, when you're on the clock writing a book, that means that you're not writing. It's not a day off, it's a day you're not writing. Yeah. But when you're writing with someone else, it's
Sin's dealing with it today.
Yeah, that's what that...
Does it necessarily become more structured? Or no?
It depends on the day.
No, it doesn't. It was all chaos.
No.
Yeah.
So it doesn't keep you honest in that way, does it? Is it
keep you working.
Working.
Yeah. Structured in that way.
Work for each other.
I think that every day there is something written, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's more structure. There's always something going because there's two people doing it. Yeah. But It's really more like if you're having your brain's having a day off, that means that it's cooking up whatever it's cooking up. That's part of writing. But while that's cooking up what it's cooking up, the other person is like, they've already done that.
They're on fire.
Then you're ready to go.
Yeah. So actually, it would be great. It would be really annoying as well. You know, you'd be like, oh, I don't know what to do, and then suddenly this perfect stuff would. So the end of the book, which we're not going to give away, but the end of the book was literally one morning. This is like in the middle of we were writing the book. We knew what the ending would be, and 4,000 words just turned up in my inbox, and I read it, and I was like, oh shit, that's the end of the book. But I had to convince you that it was.
Yeah, that was a pushback. I was like, no, I'm just messing around. This is not real.
One of the things, one of the things about writing is you have to trick yourself all the time when you're writing. It's one of the great things that no one talks about.
Yeah.
You trick yourself to write, you trick yourself to edit, you trick yourself. And one of the things that we constantly were doing was like, we were writing kind of fanfic about these characters that ended up being in the book.
That we made up, yeah.
That ended up being the book. It's like, oh, that's just some fun we're having with the characters. And then suddenly it would be like 3 chapters.
And yeah.
We just.
So it was fruitful.
It was
really.
fruitful. Yeah.
We were writing a book for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good that if you guys like it, but we were writing it for each other when we wanted to read this book that we were writing.
Yeah.
And so every single day, the next thing that we were writing, it wasn't just like this part of the book and these A to B to C. That's not what we were doing. We were like, hey, what if this happened? Would you think that would be fun?
Yeah.
I was writing it to see whether Helen would go, yeah, and it was the same, or that. Yeah, let's not talk about
That
it.
was fun.
But
There weren't many of those.
there was a lot of looking forward to what the other person was going to say.
Yeah.
And we were writing those stories for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was there any clear, it sounds almost like there wasn't, it sounds like you were kind of deeply intermingled, but was there any clear demarcation? Was there anything that was kind of Sin's area and anything that
Yes.
Helen's preserved?
Yeah.
Sin likes to write really, really, really sad things. So there's all these
Because
bits
there
in the
are
book
a
of
few
a small
moments.
child having a really miserable childhood upbringing.
It's not, I can see my family down there.
It's not.
They're very nice. The ongoing joke is that if you cry, I did it.
And I like to write the more psychedelic, weird
The
stuff.
psychedelic stuff. And we also like to say another thing is like Helen did all the descriptions, the atmosphere. I always sent these almost scripts to Helen a lot of the time, and what we were doing is back and forth is writing around the words or putting words into atmosphere, and that's how we started.
But then I learned to do dialogue slowly, although I could never quite manage American. I'd write these long things that one of our American characters
The
would say.
dialogue, it should be mentioned, is superb. I'll be quoting it.
So Sin would be like, is this supposed to be American? And I'd be like, yeah. And she's like, it sounds like Jane Austen, Helen. There's no American intelligence officers do not speak in the subjunctive.
Yeah, there's no mightant.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your description stuff at the end was
I got better.
Yeah. So we learned from each other, and now it's this wonderful bit where quite often we have arguments about our favorite bits in the book. I always say that must have been Sin.
Yeah, we fight
Yeah,
about
we
it.
fight
It's definitely
all the
Helen.
time.
It's
Yeah.
not me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a luxury though. Having those arguments, that's a good argument to have, I would think. So I think people may have got a sense of it just hearing the range of subjects that you guys just touched on, but I do want, again, for the benefit of those who haven't picked it up yet, I do want to convey just how off the chain this book is, again, in the best possible ways, and just how multifarious it is. And I say this as somebody who has had difficult conversations with publicists, the kinds of conversations that tend to begin with, What
Why?
is this?
What is this? Where does it go
What are
on
we
the
supposed
shelves?
to do
What does
with
this
it?
mean?
You
What
just say on the front
are
table.
we supposed to even do with this thing?
Yeah.
And, you've talked about the SF aspects,
Sure.
which are clearly strongly there, but equally there are elements of the spy thriller here. There are elements of...
It's a spy, thriller, adventure, romance, horror, sci-fi,
Novel of
psychedelic
ideas.
novel of ideas.
Yeah, it's heavy
Yeah.
on the philosophy.
It's heavy on the philosophy, right? Because you guys have all this philosophy of mind, and you have all this epistemology in there. It's like, where's that all going to go?
Okay, so I'm just going to reveal where that comes from. We have a character called Sunil Rao, who is a rudderless pleasure hound. He's a nightmare man. He is a addict of everything, a disaster, walking disaster, but he has this ability to, if you give him any statement, he knows whether it's true or false. Any propositional statement about the world, he can tell whether it's true or false, except when it comes to Adam, who he can't read at all. It's a bit like Twilight.
It's a little bit like Twilight.
Yeah. So that's a really fun thing to play with as a character in the book. Yeah, that was really fun in terms
And
of
we had
philosophy,
to
language and
really,
mind.
really go down these deep rabbit holes about, what it actually means, what truth is, and all of
You
that.
really did. You
We had to.
You really got down in there.
We hate plot holes. We couldn't have one.
I'd be calling up my friend Christina, who's a philosopher of mind, and going,
Yeah.
"What? Now listen."
And I mean, you may well have gone above and beyond, because for most people, ensuring that the kind of the philosophical finer points are covered, that's not necessarily job one. But no, you guys covered all that.
It was important.
The stuff about.
We're quite freaked out because last week a physicist published a blog post online that was all about truth and scruting, and used Rao as an example. So Rao is now, much to his horror, he is now a philosophical example.
An academic philosophical example in 3 courts.
Yeah, so that was fun.
Okay.
But mostly there's a lot of dick jokes.
Yeah, it's mainly
There
dick
are-
jokes, but also philosophy and psychedelia.
Yeah, there is the palette is very broad. The palette is very broad, and this
I
is.
have to say, my favourite review so far, I don't know if I told you this, there was a lady who hated it so much, this book, that she wrote an incredibly long review of how much she hated it. And she wrote down, she said one of the things she hated was the swear words in it. So she wrote down every single curse word and then tallied the number of times it was used in the book.
She definitely had a spreadsheet.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
So that was my favourite so far.
Yeah.
I mean, people need hobbies, I guess. That's something. I mean, there is. I may have been less conscious of it than most readers, because that's my own tendency. I think we should draw on all of our rich linguistic
heritage of
traditions.
linguistic, yeah.
And
They're
we
all
should
words.
have all the reaches of the register available to us, because that's what language is, right? And this is how we have fun with it. But yes, for sure, there is the highest of the highbrow is covered.
The very lowest of the low. Yeah, absolutely.
Of the lowbrow,
Yeah.
and that's great. And there may even be some jokes that we can quote. I'm just looking at the quotes that I have.
Oh no,
in
the
here.
panic.
But the point that I was going to make about all of the genre that you're touching on, all of the stuff that you're embracing, kind of joyfully, gleefully embracing most of the time, which is wonderful. It felt to me, and tell me if I'm wrong in this, it felt to me like none of that was in any way. You certainly didn't make a decision to be difficult or to make your publicist's life difficult. You just
Not a conscious.
all of this stuff just needed to be there. It felt like you have a kind of military-industrial complex that has produced this novel substance profit, which is, and there's some great fan service for science fiction geeks in here. Some really great fan service, because it's a super solid, isn't it?
It's a super solid, yeah.
It's a super solid.
So basically, it's something that's slipped into our world through an experiment that was being done at Duke University, and it's this weird, slippery super solid that has very weird effects on people who become exposed to it, and gets recruited by the military-industrial complex to do some political things. And I'm going to do a bit of a spoiler here, but basically, they're using it to weaponize nostalgia. So there's a bit of a political angle to this book.
Yeah. I was going to come to that, and I obviously wanted to tread carefully, around spoilers and so on. But I think that's safe to reveal. So this is the central premise, really, isn't it? So you have
there's this stuff.
Weaponization.
If you get exposed to it, you have a little psychic shock of trauma, and you produce in reality the physical manifestation of the thing that represents safety to you and the past and home. be it a teddy bear or a diner or whatever,
a
something
full list.
comes
Like a
in.
single-
Do you have
Oh,
a
you have
full
a
list?
list?
Oh, give us some.
Yeah,
Amazing.
a Cabbage Patch doll.
Yeah.
A ticket stub from a 1982 production of the Philadelphia Story.
Terrible play.
A Funshine Bear, not a Care Bear.
A Funshine Bear.
Funshine Bear
This
is
is
a
key,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Because these distinctions matter.
They do.
A Connect Four set.
Complete.
Complete. All counters.
All counters.
All counters.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, details matter. A motorcycle jacket, black leather. A plush dinosaur, yellow, worn condition, missing one eye.
Correct.
Yeah.
A bunch of roses. And this is where things get really interesting,
Yeah.
right? Because these are called the EOS profit generated objects,
The
right?
EPGOs,
The
yeah.
EPGOs.
EPGOs, yeah.
Okay, and these start appearing first on military bases.
On a military base in Suffolk. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever been to a US, I doubt it, but you might have gone to a US military Air Force base in England, and they're these bizarrest things ever. Paraic. They're like, imagine a piece of America that's just dropped into the countryside.
Airdropped, yeah.
So outside it's like sugar beet fields and like farmers and, you know, sort of the usual tractors and whatever. But then you go over into the base and suddenly, you know, it's like Dunkin' Donuts and everyone's like saluting the flag and it's, there's flags everywhere. It's completely bizarre.
Even the architecture changes.
Yeah, the architecture changes. And that was very
Because
much
you
like
need a
these
different kind
objects
of houses.
appearing out of nowhere.
Yeah,
So we
standard.
set at the
Yeah,
beginning,
exactly.
we set at the beginning, these things appeared on this in this base.
Yes,
in
you
Suffolk.
did. Notably, an entire American diner.
In a sugar beet field.
In a sugar beet field.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because why not, right?
Because why not? I mean, let's talk about that for a minute, because that's the kind of thing you encounter in a novel and you think, somebody just had that idea.
I did have that idea. I was
And so-
driving around on a foggy day and I looked at a sugar
I
beet
am
field.
writing
and
an entire
imagine
book
the
around that
neon.
idea.
Imagine the neon
Yeah.
looking at this.
Yeah.
There's
And I
this
got a
mad
message
thing.
straight
Yeah.
away like, oh, Sim, imagine the neon. Yeah.
Okay.
That's how
that checks
happened.
out.
Yeah, that checks out. Well done.
Because
Fault your intuitions.
it was one of those,
Yeah.
you know, you could tell. And not in a bad way. You know, it was just the kind of idea that for both reader and writer, I think it's one of those. You know, it's the kind of idea that just, you go, yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's it.
For
That's-
sure.
That's the gig.
Well, we had been talking previously about writing together, writing a novella together.
That was I was like, let's write a novella.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't going to be a novella, but I wasn't being listened to at the time. But I was right in the end. But we had already been talking about this, and we kind of sitting there trying to cook up what we were going to write about, what shape it would be, and what we were going to do. We knew that we wanted to play with tropes and archetypes and all kinds of stuff because that's what we cared about.
All the stuff that we loved from TV.
Yeah.
So we've got like, Bond villain type ski lodges in here, and we've
Yeah.
got like kind of, stupid action scenes and all the things that, that we kind of breathe and live when we
Yeah, and
are all
odd
in
couple
there.
tropes
Yeah.
and like, hard ass like police captain kind of things and everything else, and we enjoyed doing that and talking about that. And then Helen came in with the diner, and then we were like, oh yeah, bingo, that's the one. We gotta go with that. That's the only way that
So
we're going.
it begins with this character, Rao, who's been sprung from prison, a wreck. He's been sprung by the Americans because he can also tell fates from real things. And he gets taken up and shown this diner, and that's the opening.
Yeah, that's
thing.
how you start off. No spoilers. I mean,
No
it's
spoilers.
the first 5 pages.
Yes. So the lights are on. It's a perfect American diner, but there's no electricity going to it. And one of the things that we really like about this book is how it really messes with the laws of physics.
Yeah.
This world that we're talking about here is really unstable. There are things to do with the conservation of energy that really aren't holding here, and we have to fix in book 2. But anyway, moving on. But yeah, we really enjoyed writing the weird, and I think if you wanted to pick a kind of place where this sort of stuff is most like, then I think, the books like Jeff Vandermeer, for example, the sense of the new weird is where this book comes
Yeah.
from.
Yeah,
But
very
we wanted
much
it to
so.
also be fun. And all the way through, I thought this was just a big romp. And Sin kept going, no, it's quite philosophical,
It's
actually.
not
and I'm
a
like,
romp.
no, it's just a big romp, it's just fun.
I'm having
But-
a blast. I was like, yes, and
So that's what happened.
It is. I mean, it's both, right? It's immensely serious, but it's also hugely fun.
Oh, I'm glad about the
and
fun bit.
in a sustained way. And I think that's there's no higher praise really. But let's talk about the wrongness of the objects a little bit, because it's something that you get across really well, and it's also, I think, something that becomes instrumental is the specific nature of the wrongness of these EPCOs, these EOS profit-generated objects. I'm going to give people a little quote. So we talked about one of the EPCOs, which is a bunch of roses. This is one of the first that's shown to Rao for him to look at on the military base in England. And it looks at first like the archetypal chocolate box, bunch of roses. And then, I quote, the blooms are deep scarlet and highly scented, but inside the bunch is a monstrosity, a clumped mass of curled, soft, velvety red vegetal tissue smeared with patches of glossy, veined green, as if leaves and flowers had melted together. So, right, very, very strong image. This is something is clearly wrong, and in very new ways, it's clearly wrong. And one thing I wanted to ask you, just even if only to watch your faces, is it felt to me, and again, tell me if I'm wrong, it felt to me like this idea was very much an idea that existed for you guys for its own sake. In other words, this is the kind of idea, this weaponization of nostalgia, which I think inevitably is kind of, it's prone to coverage that takes the metaphor angle, is this a metaphor for social media? Is this a metaphor for, pick your modern ill? And somehow, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I got the sense that it wasn't, that it was just the idea, that this was the thing that you wanted to explore. What if it were possible for, individuals to manifest?
So I think for me, the moment, I mean, it's deeply political, but not in a metaphorical way. I mean, it really is.
It's one for one, for sure. Yeah, we're talking about nostalgia.
On Facebook, if you go on Facebook and you'll see, for example, a picture of a 1980s chocolate bar. Oh, Spangles, or like a marathon.
Was this Smith's cheesy moments?
I'm definitely showing my age here. But you'll see something that has gone, some kind of consumer object that's gone, and there it is, and you feel that kind of instant pang. And it makes you want to click. It makes you want to engage.
But within those Facebook posts, someone's talking about their, beloved chocolate bar or whatever. But then, 5 posts down, they're calling their neighbor Hitler, and and this is where it comes from.
This nostalgia has collapsed into
for sure. These strong feelings,
very strong feelings,
especially for safety.
Yeah. So we wanted that moment when you get exposed to profit and then you create the object is exactly that moment of psychic trauma that you get when you see a chocolate bar on Facebook and suddenly want to complain about how there are too many foreigners now and chocolate bars aren't the same. And I mean, I don't do it, but that's generally where it ends up, right?
But it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's, again, we were writing this in the middle of lockdown. We started, generally speaking, in 2020. And it was everywhere. It was everywhere in American media, in Irish media, in English media. It was always look back to when we were better. Wasn't it cool back then? Hey, 90s kids remembers. Do you remember the 80s? Listen to this music. And it was constant. We were reaching out for something that was safe. We were thinking deeply about 2019, it was the golden age.
And it's a trap. It's a consumer. It's a trap. It's
right, and that's how they got us to buy things. And it's always been how they've got us to buy things. But when we were stuck and we were all looking for safety, we were all looking for comfort, it was really easy. And it wasn't just capitalism, it wasn't just consumerism, but it was also politics, and it was everywhere.
And of course politics has always been the sort of debate. I mean, look at, Reagan invoking small-town America to, to get welfare cuts underway. White picket fences.
Morning in America.
And in fact, we've had people complaining to us that
because we talk a lot about
how America in the 50s is this kind of absurd golden age that wasn't like it. He's like, I was around in the 50s and it was great.
I was a white man in the 50s. Yeah. It was wonderful.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, that anecdote is all the data.
Yeah, it's all the data we need. So it was both a metaphor and also just really overt.
And just one for one. Yeah. We were talking a lot. Again, once again, cast your mind back to 2020 when we were all watching TV, and that's it. We were watching TV and we were playing video games. I was playing a lot of video games. And
We'll come back to that.
and that sparked a lot of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And like, I was playing a game called Control, and that had a lot to do with the power of objects and
Or what people imbue objects with
Imbue
power,
objects
and then they
with
become
this, yeah.
scary.
and then that was another jumping point for us, because objects were scary in this game, and you know, sometimes objects are scary, you know, so we wanted to go there.
Yeah.
All right. And not really a related note, but there's a lot of your relationship with technology in this book, and with military technology in particular, I think is interesting. So there's a story that I was texting Helen last week, and I mentioned a story that I hadn't shared with her yet because I wanted to save it for here.
I was warned about this.
Yeah, and she'll know why. It's not a. There's nothing scandalous about this particular story. But Sinead and I were in Iceland a few weeks ago, and at the airport, we were on a bus from the terminal building to the car rental place, and Sinead just looked at me and said, "What is that landing? What's that landing?" And you know, I looked up too immediately, and we were flustered, you know, long flight, and on the way, and then the bus turned a corner, and couldn't reach my phone. Very important plane. Is the key point to bear in mind, and I did not get a shot. And where the story is going is that, you're gonna have. There's a word that needs to be had with me afterwards. I haven't been looking forward to this moment. I didn't text you. It was a B2 Spirit, Helen.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was a B2
God
Spirit
damn it.
from Whiteman.
Yeah.
There are 3 in Keflavik, as you probably know, and I didn't get a shot. And
Oh no, that's fine. It's because if you take the photograph, you remember the photograph.
well, yeah.
But if you don't take the photograph,
again,
you remember
going back to the Epcot,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Now we did spend an hour driving around the base the following day, but you know, to no avail. Anyway, the point of bringing that up is I knew Helen would understand immediately
yeah.
the anguish of not getting that.
Although a B1 would have been better, but
Well,
it's
yeah,
just
there
my
is-
taste there.
there is-
Anyway, sorry, this is getting a little bit too military.
Yeah.
But
So,
yeah, no, I understand. And
I
the
think
military
the
stuff.
topic is teed up, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is clearly, you know, in the same way that you know, Helen is the naturalist to put all of those, you know, all the rest of us who think they know, you know, a thing or two about birds, you know, in their place. In the same way, she's the aviation geek to
That's
put
true.
all,
I am a sad
all other
military
aviation
aviation geek,
geeks
it's
in their
true.
place.
Like Sin came over a couple of months ago, and we went plane spotting at Lake and Heath.
It was
where
great,
this is set. And it was really hilarious. We were standing at the roadside watching F-35s coming in and doing circuits, and all around us were about 250 men in camouflage.
Camouflage,
with
pot
cameras.
bellies,
Yeah.
huge lenses.
And as they were doing these,
Yeah.
they were doing the unregulated climbs, and all the guys were going, "Go on, my son, get on!" Yeah, it was amazing. We had a really good time.
Yeah,
But
it was great. I
aviation.
wish we had like sandwiches in the back just to
Egg sandwiches,
Yeah,
sit there.
Absolutely.
So confession, yes, military stuff is my bag, and one of the great joys of writing this book was my absurd historian's attention to detail. And I went on a deep dive into special forces stuff and like military lists on the internet. I had to get it right. I had to get everything right. And Sin, who, you know, the voice of reason, would be like, "Helen, it's fiction."
We're writing fiction. You can actually make things up in fiction, is the thing.
They're like, "No, I need to know."
So the deep diving is great. It's fine. We were both very particular about it. It was just when we were missing information, that was when it would all crumble down. And I
Yeah.
was like, listen, you can fill in your own gaps.
Oh, no. So
you know.
what was really great with the book, sorry, Sin and I are a terrible double act. I'm sorry, we do this thing.
That's the whole point. That's the event.
So at the end of the book, you know, we've got this British Asian character, we've got this Jewish American character. We wanted sensitivity readers. Like, we really believe in those. It's really important to run stuff past people in the know, like really get, like, what did we get wrong? So we had an amazing Jewish sensitivity reader, Gus. We had a couple of British Asian sensitivity readers. And then we had the military sensitivity reader, which
It's
I
an
think
accuracy reader,
rather
yeah.
than sensitivity, I doubt.
Or a different kind of
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who to send it to, so I ended up sending it to Phil Cly, who is one of the most terrifying minds in the world, an absolutely lovely man who is not only deeply, deeply religious and deeply moral man, and an amazing writer, but was also in the Marines in America and served in Fallujah. and sent it to him, and I was terrified for like a fortnight.
Oh, you were, yeah.
I was just pacing up and down, like, oh my god. And
I didn't, you know.
he rung me from Colombia, the country, for some reasons.
Okay.
And he's like, I
Golfing.
loved it. And then I was like, what did we get wrong? And he went, well,
Chatter.
the radio chatter's too formal.
Too formal. Loosen it up a
Really?
bit.
Loosen it up. And that was it.
And then he said, he was like, I knew that you didn't serve Helen.
Yeah.
Where was Sin posted? Which was very cool, you guys.
Yeah.
Who serves?
No, absolutely
No,
not.
we just
In
made
fact,
it up.
we're an anti-military family. But also there was, he wanted to send it to his friends who did serve in Fallujah, that kind of thing, you know, and so.
Wow.
There's some quite dark stuff in this book
It's,
about like
you know,
CIA black sites and
Which is why I
stuff
keep
like
saying
so.
that it's not just a romp. There's there's a lot
Yeah,
going
very much
on
not.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
bit of a critique.
Yeah, and that was the question I was originally coming around to, but you've more than covered it. Was, you know, about how did you manage to work in your love of the tech, of the, you know, the gear, and also of the lore, because it's very much that too, isn't it? The lore, the conventions, the language.
Because if you speak to someone like Phil Cly or anyone that served for a long time in the American military, the cynicism is through the roof.
For sure.
They all are like, you know, we've served for a long time. This is all bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, we love this life. It's all we've got. But like, it's all bullshit.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
that-
But also for, you know, honesty reasons, I do come from a half American family, and there's a reason why we're not in America. We're very cynical about America.
Yeah.
And so the combination of, plus, you know, we're both huge nerds when it comes to like Miltech and
Well, yeah,
sci-fi.
Gyarados,
and,
I think would be the
Gyarados
phrase,
is the
yeah.
actual
Yeah.
official U.S. Army term. And it was, again, we were going into archetypes and tropes that we liked, and what we liked was this nerdy crap. And so we wanted to get it right, in the same way that we wanted to get the philosophy right. We wanted to get the tech right, the speech right, everything, yeah.
Well, you did. It's safe to say that you did, and it is very much. You know, you've indulged all that, and it is still very much. It's certainly not a Tom Clancy novel. There is no flag waving going. There's no flag waving going on here.
No, there's no flag waving. No.
And the sympathies are. I mean, it isn't. None of it is overt, and yet it is. I mean, it's very complicated. You're walking some very complicated lines with this book, and I think that's. I just mean in terms of the military tech,
Right.
and the political credentials, because in a way their intention throughout this book. I mean, you guys and the text seems sort of joyously obsessed with all of this stuff, but it is not in any sense a glorification.
No, the opposite. And we really had a lot of fun. Again, this is sort of a spoiler, but we really had a lot of fun creating main characters that we felt were as complicated and as messed up and as real as we could make them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And a lot of baddies who were incredibly one-dimensional,
Yeah.
which we thought was really fun to play with too. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot, actually, right, in terms of writing this book, is that we have these two main characters, and both of us have slightly different versions of those people in our heads. And one of the reasons we think that they turned out so kind of weirdly real on the page is because that gap between our two versions.
Yeah. It gives them a real
Makes them-
humanity,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a really
there's always a part
they're
of
always
someone
slightly
else that you
contradictory.
don't understand.
Yeah.
So it worked out, you know, where we sit around, we still talk about them, we still write, you know, scenes and conversations between them and everything else. And there's always still, like we're writing the book still, there's still a little bit of a, no, I don't think he would say that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how it would go.
Yeah.
But chances are, because of those slight differences, and because we're both writing these characters as true to themselves as we can, we're both right. They are this, and
they
people
are
are contradictions,
complicated
and they're
people, yeah.
complicated, yeah.
They are very complicated.
Especially Ro.
Especially Adam.
Well, especially both, I think, in the interest of fairness. And I wanted to cover that because there's so much plot in this book. There's so much going on. You have so much pretext, right? So you have this military conspiracy this Miltech conspiracy. You have this nefarious project, the development of profit itself. You have an actual psychopath.
Oh yeah, they're always
yeah.
fun to put in
Working,
books,
yeah,
aren't they?
and she's immensely fun to read.
She was, yes. She was called Poppy, and we loved her being
We were
called
just
Poppy.
talking on the way down about how she
we-
was Poppy.
There
and
was
how
there was a
she's-
movie quite recently with a psychopathic woman called Poppy, so we had to.
So we had
change
to
it
mix that,
Oh.
yeah.
Veronica.
But,
Poppy was particularly delicious.
Yeah, Poppy was-
yeah, we were really
the
pleased with
psychopath.
ourselves, but
The character is still great. That's a side note, though. I wanted to talk about the complexity of Rao and Adam and how much that is driving the action, because you could have hinged. This is a very fast-moving book, by the way. This does not mess around. There's a lot of ideas, but there is a lot going on. And Rao and Adam get caught up in all this really quickly.
Yeah.
And you could have had them pulled in by all kinds of mechanical means. But what actually happens a lot of the time is it's almost a byproduct of the interactions between Rao and Adam. So, for example, one of the examples I have in my notes is that at a key juncture, you have Adam not just volunteering to, but injecting himself with profit in order to discover something important about it. And when it came down to it, when that moment arrived, you could have had him do that for all kinds of, important plot mechanics reasons. But in the event, he does it because Rao's teasing him
And
about
really
being
hurt
so
him.
uptight.
Really hurt him, yeah.
And he teases him about being a psycho.
Yeah.
And on that basis, being immune to profit. So Adam is so keyed up that he goes and injects himself.
Very emotional reasons for him being very upset about it.
emotional. Yeah. There's a lot.
So, and I
going
think
on
it's not
here.
just one or the other. So for Adam, that moment is really complicated. It's like he just wants to end it all. He can't. He's really unhappy, but he also wants answers. He wants to get answers for this
because that's
his
what
job.
he's there for. Yeah, for sure.
So he does do that, and it all ends up.
And also,
weird.
not for nothing, we have these two characters. We always line up Rao to be the big disaster, big drama queen. It's all big
I'm
gestures.
not a drama queen, Adam.
I'm not a drama.
This whole thing, right? He's like, "How dare you?" And but and then there's Adam, who's a military guy, very.
We should probably describe
reserved,
them. Yeah, with Adam as
and-
being the most.
And,
Sorry, you've got.
Sorry.
No, I don't.
But-
No,
But another thing about Adam, which is revealed, but like Adam, not hugely obvious, is that he's just as dramatic. And so, he has a lot of big feelings going on, and he's just not showing them the way that Rao does. And we had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, so
because
this is a big dramatic moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. They're both drama queens, both of them terrible drama queens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can I give people a sample of dialogue between them?
Yes.
Please do.
Oh God, what have you chosen?
It's kind of a representative sample, and it's low key, but people will get it. The dialogue between them is amazing. They are fabulously antagonistic and very much an odd couple. I'll just read the sample. Yeah. So, Adam, Rao, have you been? How have I been? Yes. Busy. Busy good or busy bad? Busy. This, Rao recalls, is what it's like to converse with Adam. There's a lot of really understated comedy going on there, and there are a number of really great running jokes, and one of them, I think it's okay to touch on a little bit.
Not the Langley one. That makes me laugh every time.
Me too.
Rao's consistently telling Adam that he trained at Langley with the FBI, and Adam's like, I never went to Langley.
Yeah.
It's just constantly teasing him about it.
Because he's Air Force, right?
He's CIA and Air Force. He's like
CIA,
defense CIA.
yeah.
He wouldn't touch the FBI.
Yeah, wouldn't touch the bureau. My God, those hacks.
Yeah. And again, that kind of hierarchy, that's real inside baseball, it's all great. But there is a lot going on between these two characters. And in that moment, as we mentioned, that there is Well, let's jump in fact, slightly afterwards. A lot is beginning to be revealed that becomes important, and a lot of we're beginning to understand a lot of the tensions between these two. And we discover in a moment when Rao is effectively trying to talk Adam down, trying to stabilize him after these experiences, he settles on the question because he thinks it's an entirely non-contentious area. He settles on asking him to remember his first kiss, right? And he's making a lot of assumptions.
Oh yeah, he's like, what was it like? You'd be like, was it like your high school sweetheart in front of the American flag? Did you peck her on the cheek?
The American flag waving in the background.
Yeah.
And Adam's like,
Right?
Incorrect. Guess again.
Yes. And can we?
Yeah, it turns out, that Adam's first kiss wasn't a girl at all. It was a boy called Mark at by a baseball, in a baseball.
Baseball diamond, and then his dad found him, and they nearly shat themselves. Yeah.
And of course, because Rao had no idea that Adam wasn't straight this whole time because Adam's unreadable. And he's like, what?
And Rao makes a lot of assumptions.
That, though, isn't it? He very much assumes because Adam didn't kiss him once that one time.
Oh yeah, there was this one time that Rao was drunk
he's
and
clearly
leaned in
ragingly
for a kiss.
heterosexual, right?
Yeah,
That's
well, he
the
didn't
only
kiss me. He
explanation.
must be heterosexual.
Right?
It's very Rao. Yeah. But Adam, you must what? Yeah. Yeah. So there was a kind of moment there where this all comes out because Adam is very. I mean, you can imagine growing up in the being in the military and the don't ask, don't tell era. You have to behave in a very straight manner. So this just blows Rao's mind. Like
it blows his mind.
Yeah.
He can't process.
Well, I mean, we wanted to also talk about and figure out what it would be like if you grew up being able to tell the truth of things, like to know when someone's lying, to know what's real, what's fake. And what that would do to your relationships.
It'd be a nightmare.
Yeah, it'd be awful.
If someone's lying.
And,
how was that? Oh, it was great.
And what that would do to not just romantic relationships, but friendships, family, everything. And then here comes this one person that, can not only lie, but can tell the truth, and it doesn't matter, everything feels the same.
And what you have to do in that case, and Rao has never had to do this in his life before, is learn to trust them.
Right.
And you can't love someone unless you trust them.
Exactly.
So this becomes a huge love story, really.
But it's a problem, because Rao is very much Rao's number one fan, so his assumptions must be correct. He's watched Adam for so long. He's straight. I got it. I understood. Yeah, no, there's a no there. That means he's straight. I get it. I'm right.
Yeah.
And there's no way for him to check that. And Adam's not going to tell him anything. Adam isn't a teller. But he doesn't lie either. And so this is part of the fun of how they interact, is that at no point is Adam ever really directly lying.
Yeah.
But because of the way that Rao trusts and assumes and makes up his own stories, there's miscommunication.
Yeah.
And that was fun.
They're idiots.
Yeah, they're idiots.
Yep.
Yeah.
You called them. I think these are great characters. These are enormously fun to read. You guys called them the terrible men.
Terrible men. Yeah, the terrible men.
They're terrible.
They're awful.
I mean, okay. I mean,
it's said with love.
Comes
It's
from a
very
place of
fond.
love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
You wouldn't want these guys to come for dinner. It would just be a nightmare. Can you imagine? It'd be fun.
Very early on, I gave my father, I think, 15 chapters very early on to read. The first thing that he said was, "Oh, they're assholes. I like them." that was the assessment. And yeah, they're terrible people.
Yeah, I mean,
They seem very protective of them.
it was great. I felt a lot. Reading this book. I just wanted to give these guys a chance.
One of my favourite moments that happened in the entire writing of this book was the terrified sendings of pages to my agent, who's now Sin's agent as well, who was expecting another nature writing book. I sent him half this book. And we had a Zoom, and it was really scary, right? Because there's Bill and Simon, from the agency, not the CIA, the agency.
The other agency.
And towards the end of discussing these pages, I said, like, do you have any substantive criticism? Like, what do we need to do with this book?
Why aren't you mad?
Like, what do you
give us notes?
Give us notes. And they looked at us, and it was like, you need to make Adam hotter and more dangerous.
And we're like,
okay, we can do that.
Right, you are.
Yeah.
It was fun.
So it was surprisingly not a difficult conversation to have for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think people were sort of buoyed up on the fun of the book at this point, and it was during the pandemic that, again, everyone was just like, oh, fun.
Yeah, something, please.
Yeah. It is immensely fun. It's also heartbreaking, I should warn people. I think that's a good thing. It's deeply emotionally
I enjoy
involving.
it.
It's very emotional.
Genuinely, the big fight that we had a lot of the time is how sad, how heartbreaking can we really go? And my assessment of all things, not just this, not just writing, but enjoying media in general, is I really enjoy the big, sad, terrible feelings, because they help me to get there, and to understand it myself.
Whereas I'm the opposite, of course. I'm like, let's just have. No, let's make it fun and happy. So we had this big kind of disagreement about whether it should have a happy ending or not,
or a sad ending.
Or a sad ending, and I'm like,
we're just gonna not.
We're not going to go there.
We're not
so
going
we're not going to tell you what happened.
But I do think that it's important to be able to have those heartbreaking moments and to really go into, because the book is about a lot of things. It's about nostalgia, it's about politics, it's about love and all kinds of things. But it's also about trauma and how you carry that trauma and what it does to you as a person in your relationships and everything else, and what it can look like on other people, and how it informs who you are and who you will be. But also, how you look at it informs a lot of other things too.
Yeah, and sometimes it's okay for something to be writ large in dramatic terms.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in fact, I was going to ask this later, but let's cover it now, because it seems like a good moment. Sin, you are a gamer,
Yes.
I have discovered.
Are you rubbing your hands together?
I'm rubbing my hands.
Let's get into it,
Because, you're not just a gamer, you're a Red Dead fan.
I am,
together.
hugely so.
And The Last of Us. I mean, that makes you good people.
Thank you so much.
To me, that makes you my people. And we won't go down that whole.
We can do another podcast another time.
We can do a podcast maybe.
I would love that. Yeah.
Dutch Vanderland, was he bad from the start?
Anyway, moving on.
We have essays to write.
We'll have a breakout group.
Absolutely.
So the question I was going to ask was, I. 18?
18.
22.
Cool. All right. Good to know.
Those are nice numbers.
More of a guideline, though, right? So what?
That was very rare of you. That was great. That's a very guideline, isn't it, Adam?
Yes. Yeah.
Gamers.
Good to know, gamers. Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, I don't have to be sold. That's a very rich culture that exists in a complementary way. But did you feel like there was an opportunity to do some kind of, cross-cultural transfusion as you approached this first major fiction project?
So I guess, no, not really, not in a conscious way, but there's a frustration, I think, for a lot of people who would consider themselves gamers or anything else, is that, there's a huge history of video games across the Western world, the Eastern world, And when you're in this world, you actually you know that history and you respect it. You've been doing this since you were 6, younger sometimes, and you bring this on into adulthood. And it's always been looked down as time wasting, you'll turn your eyes square, yada yada. But the big frustration is that corporations know that you've lived your entire life in this world, and they sell you your childhood back to you constantly.
So nostalgia has got a really interesting
a huge
place
part
in
of gaming is nostalgia.
Yeah.
And this is deeply frustrating, but I wanted to at least put that in. If someone plays video games and reads our book, there's going to be at least one thing in there that really messes with them in terms of video game nostalgia. And it's a big pull. It's a huge pull. It's one of the big selling points in that industry is nostalgia, is adult gamers look back to when you were 6. Wasn't everything so easy when it was Saturday morning cartoons and Pac-Man? And it's just,
You sold me. I'm like, yeah, it was.
It was really good, and it's
Yeah.
nice. And but it's the music, it's the noises, it's the colors, and video game is actually way more complicated and way more complex than it's presented to outside of the industry and outside of the community, which I won't get into.
We'll do the podcast.
We'll do the podcast. but yeah, it was important to me to have like something there because it is insidious and comforting.
Yeah.
And also, just I should say, again, this is a slight spoiler, but I think it's an okay spoiler. We got some reviews talking about, one of them was very funny in a very esteemed and august publication that described the politics of profit as being, if you defeat profit, then the world is saved and everyone becomes a Democrat, which made us laugh our heads off because that's not what the book says at all. It's prefaced with a quote from a famous anarchist to start with. But anyway, the book is politically, I hope, nothing really changes at the end. All the structures that are dangerous and horrifying are still in place.
Still dangerous and horrifying.
Yeah, it's not like, we saved the world and everything's better. It's like we saved the world and
everything's
just as bad. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's
but there's some love, so it's great.
There's nothing naive going on in this book.
Yeah.
There's no naive.
Yeah, I just need to say that
thesis
the theme of the book is not please everyone become a Democrat. That's
And it's also, we were also accused of having so many brand deals.
Oh yeah, this
was hilarious.
Brilliant.
This was hilarious. Talk about this.
So what was it? We got told that all the brands in our book, there were too many brand names.
Yeah, we must have a brand deal with Fisher Price or something. It's like, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's the whole Instagram thing.
Placement in fiction is not a thing.
No, we don't get any money for mentioning brands in fiction. That doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
Not like Instagram.
It's bizarre. This assumption is because of TV.
Yeah.
People see a MacBook and they think, oh, there's a couple of thousand from Mac.
Also, I don't think Fisher Price would be very happy with what we did with
No, they wouldn't like it. No.
Yeah, I'm guessing not. Because,
no.
This was not a Mattel type synergy. Really. There's some distressing placement, I think.
Yes.
It's fair to say. And as well as the product placement conspiracy theory, I don't know how much of this you want to touch on, but obviously the book is quite recently out, and it's now thankfully and deservedly generating quite a lot of buzz. But people on a popular book review platform, which will remain nameless.
I don't care. His name is Mike. No, it's Goodreads.
So this is, I mean, look, let's not get into a debate about whether that site needs to exist or, I mean, we can.
The site is Goodreads.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, it is the bane of all writers. No, it's not really. It's hilarious. It's absolutely brilliant.
It's great.
It's a massive review site for books, and people get very exercised about the books they read and give you stars.
Yeah.
And it's
a lot of things.
It's quite brutal if you're a writer to read the reviews.
And the specific one of the specific allegations in this case was that you guys have. You've gone woke.
We've gone woke.
You just up and went woke.
Oh yeah,
to sell books.
We went woke to get published.
To get published, we went woke.
Yeah.
That's.
I don't even know where to start on that one. Because the history of the word woke, for a start, is a good thing. Would you rather be asleep? I don't understand. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that was a weird one.
And then the accusation that then is the only way to get published by having gay people exist is the accusation.
Yeah.
In order to get published, we have to insinuate that gay people exist.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
I think we did well with that. We got published, didn't we?
Well, we got published, to be fair.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I guess it's wearying on some days, but a lot of the time it's just
people believe what they want to believe, and that's okay, because the thing is that as well, if you're writing a book that's full of big feelings, people are going to have big feelings. Not all of those feelings are going to align with your own. That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, part of writing a book is to get people to actually read it and feel something. And all art is going to make you feel something. It doesn't necessarily have to be good. every single time.
Yeah.
That's not the point of art, to make you feel good. That's dangerous.
Sure. To make you feel,
Sure.
but not to make you feel something,
good. Yeah,
right?
exactly, yeah.
And Helen, did you feel you were especially that you had special
Worry on your
obligations that you because you had been established for a little longer and you had made your name in this particular space, which wasn't obviously as particular as people often made it out to be, but because you were a nature writer and that book was so huge, you were doing so much on the nature beat for the Times, for example. So you did have a very strong presence there. Did you feel that when you made this departure that people were kind of what they were voicing was almost a sense of ownership of you?
No, I mean, I did think people would be quite horrified.
Yeah.
It's very different. But then again...
'Cause there's a seam of politeness and gentility, isn't there, in nature writing?
Nature writing is, but a lot of my nature writing has got jokes and brand names in.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, and I think one of the things that I'd like to sort of try and get across to people who've there aren't really many birds. There's some black kites in here, but there aren't that many birds. But one of the things this book and Natures of a Hawk does repeatedly, and Vesper Flights, is interrogate our uses of historical imaginings, of historical consciousness of the past, how we use the past and what it does to us. And it's deeply political in Natures of a Hawk as well as personal, and deeply, deeply political in Vesper Flights, and also in here. So even though it's a novel, and it's got two characters who are absolute nightmares who we adore, and even though it's got lots of Bond villain stuff and giant kind of theatrical things happening and lots of military stuff, at heart it's about trauma, and it's about love, and it's about
Our relationship to memories.
Relationship to memories, and how memories are recruited by bad actors to serve their own ends. And I think that's one of the most important things anyone can be writing or thinking about at this point. So it's all one of it. It's just me, isn't it? I mean, just one person. So
Two people that are writing.
Yeah.
No, I know, but
I know.
in terms of
the overlap, the Venn diagram between what we both believe in and what we wanted to write about, and it was exactly that.
Yeah.
And it worked out, and that question comes up a lot. It's like, Helen, how much of this is a departure? And what we realized, not only writing, but also talking about it more, is that not a departure at all.
Yeah.
It feels like.
Unless you're expecting, feather-footed through the Plashy fen passes the questing vole, which is not like that. No.
It's very much not like that. It is, though. It is consistently fun. It is consistently
Good.
It is propulsive. It is addictive. It is all of those good things. It is. It is sometimes colossally demanding for the reader.
We didn't realise that when we were writing.
Well, we didn't want to talk down to anyone either.
Yeah, you're giving people a lot of credit, and I love that.
Yeah.
And another thing that I love that people may appreciate is that all of the acronyms stayed in.
But
right?
we now have a glossary.
We have a glossary at the back.
Glossary.
Guys,
I want to give people a sampling of the acronyms.
The glossary is my favourite thing. So it comes down from, we've got airborne. Yeah, I mean, there's loads of things here. Charlie, Mike, CIA, CONUS, Creech, CRT, CCUTV. My favourite one is BFR, which is military slang for big fucking rock.
Yeah. That's a real one.
That's a real one. It's all real.
Except for the ones that we made up. All real except for the ones that we made up.
Yeah. Do you know what anyone here know what a FOD walk is? A FOD walk is a foreign object, I've become French. A foreign object debris walk. So it's when you go to a military base and every morning people have to walk in a line along the runways checking that there's no objects. And it's what you do if people are really hacked off with you and you've done a bad job, you get sent on a FOD walk. That was really fun. And we've had actually people reviewing this book, readers saying that they really, really hated the acronyms. That was their least favourite part of it. And actually it's one of my favourite parts.
Good.
Yeah.
They'll get them and they'll like them.
Yeah. Even if they don't like them, they've got them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Well, it's really, I mean, you can't give characters who have been in the military their entire life, they can't suddenly start spelling out
And explaining
No.
everything.
explaining
yeah.
things.
This,
It doesn't make
it's
any
a matter
sense
of
at all.
verisimilitude,
Yeah,
apart from anything else. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that is how they say things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they are very, very deeply ingrained.
And I quite like it when Adam gets really hacked off with Rao. He starts really, really going for the acronyms in a quite a sort of clipped, pissed off way.
Yeah.
Defense mechanism.
Yeah, defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's aggressive. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's great. So I'm kind of. We're going to have to freewheel for the last few minutes because I've exhausted or disregarded most of my
No,
my
this is
carefully
so much amazing.
structured.
You guys have
questions.
no idea. There are like huge paragraphs on
This
that
is just terrifying.
iPad.
This
Like,
is
look how cool this
terrifying.
is.
overthinking, over preparation.
No.
I'm gonna. I know I'm gonna kick myself afterwards because there are so many bits that I wanted to highlight. But I think we have covered a lot, and I think before we've covered the wrongness. Yeah, we've covered the characterization. Yeah, I just maybe just before we wrap up, let's just get back to that question of characterization because there's so much going on in terms of ideas and in terms of tech and in terms of concepts that it's important not to lose sight of. This is primarily a story of two characters, and they are such a successful pairing.
The odd couple, the odd couple, yeah.
They're so beautifully drawn and so richly drawn, both of them, and so contrastingly drawn that you never feel the time passing with this book. And I wanted to give one example about the characterization of Adam. And I was going to turn it to you, Sin, but let me know if my instincts are failing me there. There's a scene. There's a lot written in backstory for Adam, because Adam had a very difficult childhood, right? I think we mentioned that his father served as well.
His father in the Air Force, yeah.
Right, and his father was very much the archetype of the buttoned-up military man, and
what he says goes.
What he says goes hard on his...
And he's deeply unhappy too.
Yeah,
I mean,
deeply
nobody's happy in that house.
Yeah. But Adam has an aunt who he has a connection with from early on, and Adam begins to. He's certainly not happy at home. He is very, very. I mean, he's repressed, even as a child, right? There's already a lot of unhealthy
coping mechanisms and holding on to things. Yeah, the whole family is essentially this. Clenched fist. All of them are like this. So we go into Adam and his father and everything else, but we already know, like, all of them, all the way down. The Rubinsteins are like this, clenched fists.
Yeah, like the grandfather we don't talk about, and how, what's it like to be in the U.S. military and be Jewish and never get promoted.
Exactly.
And, there's all this backstory.
And there's historically this happened throughout the American military, where both black families and Jewish families would be overlooked, even though they made up the majority of the numbers. And so this is a constant narrative that's going on, and what that would do to you. Let
alone like World War
II. Yeah, exactly.
During the Holocaust. So there's.
And then we have Aunt Sasha, who is still part of that same family, that clenched fist, but instead of clenching up, she like forced a release.
Yeah.
And showed that there was another way to like this young kid.
And she's funny and chaotic and accepting and
crazy.
All these, and a bit like Rao in those respects, like really very, very.
And give a little bit of freedom. And a little bit of safety. And another theme of the book is safety, but and when safety is actually safe, and what we decide is safe is often not the case.
And like Adam falling for Rao. I mean, Rao is like the least safe person in existence, but somehow there's something about him which seems safe. Which seems safe to Adam. So
because it's freedom. If your entire life is buttoned up, then the scariest thing in the world is going to be freedom, but it's also going to be something that you crave in some way. So and he learned how to see that chaos as safety.
And what Adam manifests under the influence of profit is not, strictly speaking, an object of nostalgia, right? It's
No, it's something miserable from his
something
past, which
miserable.
is great.
yeah.
It's a choice. It's a choice that
choice.
happens.
It's a choice, it's
yeah.
a moment, it's a choice, it's a turning point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things about the book that's, again, I'm sorry, I'm wittering on about this, but I love the fact that at the beginning of the book, you know, you've got this chaotic Rao who seems to have free will and free choice in everything and just do whatever he wants with, like, you know, there's consequences, but he's still going to do it. And then you have this guy whose entire life is buttoned up and he's just following orders. He's got no free will at all. And by the end of the book, it becomes really clear that the only person here with free will is Adam.
Yeah.
And Rao has had no free will throughout the entire book. There's no choice for who he is or what happens to him. It's always going to be what happens to him. It's always going to happen, and he has no say in it. So I really like that sense that the book is kind of an hourglass that turns around that clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really into
Oh,
the hourglass. Oh,
The lights are dimming.
Last call.
Ding, ding.
Okay, I mean, I guess I need to do the last questions, the sort of the typical last questions.
Do it.
Are we
Go on then.
are we getting a sequel? Are we getting more?
Well, we're getting TV.
Because we want more. We'd like more.
Be cool, be cool.
Yeah, are we making that official? Do you have an announcement?
Well, yeah, we haven't got an announcement, but we can totally tell you that we're going to be working on a TV series, but there's no official
And there's
announcement.
nothing, and also, you know,
So keep that under your hats, everyone.
yeah, doesn't leave the room.
And we do really, really want to write book 2, because not only do these characters won't leave us alone,
Yeah.
you know, they really won't, but also there is some...
We have to work again together.
Yeah.
This is how it is now.
Yeah.
Dynamic too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are sort of threads from book 1 that we know kind of where they're going to...
Yeah.
We're quite excited about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can't
And we
wait.
think we might need to do lots of research trips to, you know, California.
Oh yeah. We're gonna have to do that.
I said to Sin, where should we set the next book? Where do you want to go?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Whatever serves the material.
Whatever serves the material, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, it honestly, it was a joy to write. And,
Absolutely.
It kept us going through the pandemic, and I really hope that if you guys read it, you have as much fun with it as we did.
Yeah.
It was really fun. Right, thank you.